Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and I'm back with another review. And today we're taking a look at from Transformers Studio Series Gamer Edition. This is War for Cybertron Bumblebee. Now this is the first figure in the new subline of Studio Series, but it was the third one to be released. Go figure. I think a lot of that has to do with online retailers getting individual cases of figures, and it just so happened that they got Prime first, Barricade second, and Bumblebee last. Now, I have to tell you right off the bat, out of the three, Bumblebee is the most complicated figure to transform. Um, it's also the smallest, so that leads to a lot of, not a lot, but some fiddliness to the transformation. Because of that, and the fact that the instructions are absolutely useless, I am actually going to take you through robot to vehicle and back again. Vehicle to robot, much easier. Starting off in robot mode, let's go over the articulation. You have a ball jointed head, ball joints in the shoulders, bicep swivel, 90-degree bend at the elbow, no wrist articulation due to transformation, waist swivel, ball joint at the hips, over 90-degree knee bend, and due to the transformation, you actually have reverse ankle pivot. It can go out, but cannot come back in, but it does end up in a natural A stance. Now let's get a good look at Bumblebee's face there. Obviously, this is from that War for Cybertron video game. So there is that. Now, like the other Gamer Edition figures, there is that gimmick where the arm can remove and to have a weapon usage. Now also, Bumblebee does have a handheld weapon, which is this sword. Now, unfortunately, the only way to store all the weapons at the same time is to peg the sword in to the rear of one of the blasters. But removing the sword, you can peg it into either hand, but I recommend doing this one, since this arm right here is the one that you can remove to peg the weapons on. Now, unfortunately, unlike Barricade and Optimus Prime, there is no storage for Bumblebees Arm, which is very, very upsetting, because it basically means that you're going to have to leave the arm off to the side while using one of the weapons. We'll start with this basic blaster here. I don't know their names. I never played the games. But I do believe this is the one that Bumblebee used often. And with one of the blasters removed, you can then, using a tab on the side of the sword, peg the sword in. And then if you're going to switch from one blaster to the other, which is this one, just slide it on. Now this spins a little more freely than I would like, but there you go. And of course, the other blaster can take up the slot that was opened up. Unfortunately, though, in terms of full storage of weapons and stuff, you can only do it the way I showed you. And while using a weapon, I mean, if you have the sword stored, you can then peg the hand into the sword like that, but that's just looks a little silly to me. And I mean, I looked all over underneath that there was some way this could like slide up and in, but really, it just doesn't. I mean, like there's like a natural, like an organic groove there but it just doesn't fit, and the instructions make no mention of it. Very disappointing. So there's that, and you know why we're talking about the rear of the figure. And you go ahead and remove the weapons, put the arm back on, and and the arm does hold on quite nicely. There's the rear of the figure, which, as some of you probably know by now, the designers, because the War for Cybertron was a third-person shooter, they made a point of making sure the rear of the figure, which is what you saw a lot, looks good. And you know, and to be honest, I think out of the three, you know, maybe Bumblebee's rear looks pretty good. I don't see a lot of hollowness. Everything looks natural, so there is that. So I think what we'll do Now we'll just get into the transformation. And like I said at the beginning, take the instructions, throw them off to the side. You're not going to use them. First thing you want to do is rotate the shoulders uh, uh, up, like so. So they're facing the shoulder pad, I should say the shoulder pads up and inward, like so, that they're facing outward like that. And that is for uh, vehicle mode, and you'll see why in a moment. Next, what you want to do is take the hands and you're going to fold them 90 degrees inward on that hinge. And this is actually a cool part to the transformation. As you notice, there's like a gap there. That was actually locking the wheel in place so it doesn't roll. Now that that's been moved, the wheel can spin. And to get the wheel into proper position, go ahead and rotate the whole wheel and wheel well down, and it will saw friction into place behind the hand. Do it again on this side, and there you go. Now the next step is what you want to come in underneath. Let me move the arm out of the way there so you can see what's going on. There's a tab on the inner chest piece that pegs into a slot that will be part of the hood of the car, or the vehicle, I should say. I don't know if this is a car or not. And that's actually rather tight, so you want to go in there, lift it up, get it out of the way, and then bring this whole section up so the arms are facing forward. Now, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and bring this back all the way so it's hanging. That chest section is almost 90 degrees from the head, and that will give you enough room to, number one, and move the arms ever so slightly forward. This is not shown in the instructions. Flare out the side panels, and at the same time, you know what? Actually, before you flare those out, start moving the arms down on this inner hinge piece, so they're actually facing the arms are facing forward like that, and that will give you the clearance to flare out the side panels, which are not shown in the instructions, and you need to collapse them in for robot mode to give it a more streamlined appearance. So flare those out, and then take that panel and bring it forward. Then what you can do is bring this section back down, and this is what I was talking about with the arm panels. Crap. You want use the. I know this is going to sound weird, but use the deco, that neon pink line, to help line up the shoulder panels. And then what you'll do is bend the arm up. Now, I mean, the instructions show you doing this like some weird way with like bending the arms and like all around and stuff like that, and just bend it up. So just keep the arm straight, bend them up at the elbow, and then make sure you have that shoulder piece as flush as possible. And then the arms, the wrists, and the wheel well will stick out like this and will clip into place rather nicely. So do it again on this side. And unfortunately, as you're moving the arms around, it is natural for it to that panel to rotate downward. And the reason that shoulder panel has to be down is that there's a slot there that the tab will help secure the vehicle mode. So get that done, rotate the arm, and then bring it up just like this. You want to keep the wrist on the outside, and once you have it in like that, that should be rather tight. Again, because there's ball joints involved, you can reach in and position things. And as you get, and really when we get to the final steps of the transformation, it will help lock up. So now we're going to come to the rear of the vehicle, and there's some cool stuff going on here. The first thing you want to do is rotate the figure at the waist. The next thing you want to do is this internal hip section is going to swing up, and you want to make sure it swings up far enough that that gap right there sits underneath those tabs. And if you don't have it far enough up, sitting it will not, the legs will not close properly. And there we go. You just pop it in underneath. Pop that piece back down like that, like that. And believe it or not, the transformation gets a lot easier from this point. I mean, that was a little tricky there. Give yourself some space, flip up that panel. So now we have the legs and hips in position. Go ahead and flip these, unpeg the legs and flip them outwards like this. Bend them down on the knee joint. Then you can continue closing them up so they're sitting like so. Flip the feet all the way around, that they're come over that, the part of the calf there. Or is that the thigh? Yeah, no, the thigh. Flip down those posts there. And basically, now you would think, oh, and then you want to flip the heels up. Now, the instructions kind of make you think that, like, there's a peg there. There isn't. Basically, what you have to do now, there's a slot there on the back of the forearm, and then there are the two slots on the back shell and on that shoulder joint. So as you rotate this up, you want to peg it in like that, and then close it up like so. And everything should come together fairly nicely. Do it again on this side. Peg everything up. Make sure it's all well and good. Bring down this back section. The back section will peg into the rear wheels. And there you have Bumblebee in its vehicle mode. And as you saw, we went from a smaller deluxe to an incredibly small vehicle mode that, from what I remember of the game, looks a lot more accurate than the original toy. If you remember the original toy, which, by the way, a lot harder to transform than this guy, you only had a hand blaster that I don't think was accurate to the game, but you did have some flip-out energon blades on each side of the wheel well. Now, there is weapon storage, and there's total weapon storage. First, you want to take this longer blaster. There's a slot right there that will peg in right into the middle there, covering Bumblebee's face. Next, you want to take this blaster and peg it right there in the roof. And then the sword here will just peg in along the bumper. It does break up that very nice, very smooth, Tron-like, this actually looks like a light cycle, that Tron-like light cycle, but you do have the weapon storage. And by the way, if you notice, wheels are pinned in. These are not like mushroom, like that pressure peg, so they're rolling very freely, and it's very nice. Oh, that is very, very nice. So what we'll do now is we'll pause, give you guys a moment to breathe, and we'll come back and I'll take you back into robot mode. Okay, going back to robot mode, a lot easier. Go ahead, remove all the weapons, put them off to the side, and basically just undo everything you just did. Pop up this rear panel, bring it forward. I wouldn't, I mean, it is going to like fold up like that, but I would just leave it up to give yourself plenty of room. Unpeg the legs, bring them back out just like so. Flip out the heels. Bring up those sections right there. Bring the feet over the legs. Straighten them out. Peg them into place, just like that. Bring down that hip section, rotate it around. Unpeg the arms, bring them out straight, and then just rotate this section up. Well, actually, let's go ahead and leave that section down for the time being, so we can come in, bring back that whole section right there. Now make sure you bring the hood panel. Oh, that just popped off. That was not supposed to happen. Oopsie. No charge for the mistakes, but I actually did have that pop off on me once, and oh boy. There we go. There we go. Keep that, and let's bring that. Make sure you bring this panel forward first. Close up those side panels. Bring up the arms, just like so. Bring Bumblebee's head down. You'll might hear it, but you'll feel it snap into place right there on the chest. And as you can see how it does give Bumblebee that svelte look. If you leave this out, it does affect the arms and makes Bumblebee look a little more thicker than he should. Other than that, let's bring that. Oh, popped off again. Hope I didn't break anything. I don't think so. That down, and then this comes up, just like that on the back. Rotate the arms around so that the fists are facing forward. Rotate those wheels back up into place. They will friction and softly tab into position, and you'll know the right position is when that wheel is facing forward, that you close up the wrist, and it sits into place. I really like this part of the transformation. It's a very nice touch. And there we go. Bring the forearm panels down. And there's Bumblebee back in its robot mode. Oh, not too bad. Like I said, going from vehicle to robot is a lot easier than the robot to vehicle. But I do think that the figure cleans up rather well. You don't have a lot of kibble hanging off the back. And what's there is functional. I mean, it does do weapon storage. So, you can put Bumblebee's sword there. And, there he goes. So, I think we can call this review done. So, we'll pause, and we'll come back with my final thoughts. As always, I like to bring in the backdrop. Well, I usually only do it for the Studio Series 86, but I figure I could do it for the Gamer Edition figures. It's a nice little look. I think that's Iacon or something, or Damascus, or one of those planets that they created after the 2007 movie or some time before, where they started fleshing out the lore and backstory of Transformers. But yeah, I have a hard time with Bumblebee. You really need to do the transformation like 2 or 3 times to feel comfortable with it, and even then, I still was running into issues with the shoulders and getting them lined up, and just stuff like that. But once everything lines up, it all pegs into place rather nicely. But I have to say, and I think you saw it here, as I said in the beginning, Bumblebee is the smallest figure and the hardest to transform, which might be a turn-off to a lot of people. especially going from Optimus Prime, that really was a joy to transform, and it was like a throwback to old Transformers because it was so thick and stocky and a solid, beefy build. Um, but really, that's all I can say. I mean, in terms of recommendations, definitely Optimus Prime is first. I might put Bumblebee second and Barricade last, just because, I mean, Barricade, I just felt, its sculpt limited a lot of the posability and articulation. And because Bumblebee is so thin and lithe, you can get a lot more movement out of it. But definitely the transformation is a lot harder on Bumblebee than on Barricade. And as I mentioned, you have that issue where you can either store all the weapons or you can just store a couple of them in robot mode, but you have no space to store the actual the robot limb you have to remove. Personally, I do not like that gimmick at all as part of this line, and I think they could have just like fudged it just so we wouldn't end up with figures that have loose pieces laying around. Oh, and obviously, I should mention Bumblebee comes with the most accessories of any of the figures. It comes with 3 weapons, so that is something to say. But ultimately, the choice will be up to you if you're a fan of the games. And unfortunately, they're not available. At least that's what I've been told, which I find very funny that they're putting these figures out for a game that there's actually people buying Transformers who may not have been born yet when that game was released. I'm not old. Uh, so I don't know how much of an interest there is. Now, I got this figure off of Hasbro Pulse. As of right now, Hasbro Pulse is the only place I can think of that will have all 3 figures in stock. Amazon, I think, has unfortunately sold out of Optimus Prime for the time being, but they have Barricade, but they haven't gotten their stock of Bumblebee, and Big Bad just has Barricade as Optimus Prime is sold out, and Bumblebee hasn't come in stock yet. So there's that. And of course, you can always wait for these to show up at brick and mortar retail. I know Target listings have just gone up, but they haven't gone live yet. And as with Target and Walmart, chances are you'll find the figures in store before you can get them online. So that's about it for the review. If you like this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. While I will always appreciate the views, the likes, comments, and subscriptions, help to communicate to YouTube through their algorithms that my channel should be exalted and held upon high. If you want to make the ultimate sign of support, I do have a Patreon. It is www.patreon.com/ChuckDog1999. All I ask for is $1 a month or $12 a year. No thrills, no tears, no special rewards. All you're doing is helping me help you to help me help you bring figures like this to you, as well as keeping up the infrastructure of the channel. But as I always say, if you can't afford the $1 a month, $12 a year, your views are more than thanks enough. Patreon is just a cherry on top of an already generous sundae. So that's about it for the review. This is your old pal Chuck once again for Bumblebee. We will see you next time.